The bridge of the Defiant hummed with quiet activity as Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main view screen. Stars stretched out before him, millions of tiny lights in the endless dark. For 3 months, his crew had been exploring this sector of space, mapping new routes and looking for habitable planets. Earth had finally cracked faster than light travel, and humanity was eager to see what waited beyond their solar system. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communications station. "It's not from Earth. The signal is coming from somewhere ahead of us." Morrison straightened in his chair. This was it. Humanity's first contact with alien life. He had trained for this moment, imagined it countless times, but now that it was here, his heart pounded against his ribs. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The view screen flickered and changed. The stars disappeared, replaced by the image of a creature that looked nothing like any animal Morrison had ever seen. It stood upright like a human, but that was where the similarities ended. The being had a hard, segmented body that gleamed like polished metal. Its head was triangular with multiple eyes arranged in a geometric pattern. When it moved, Morrison could hear a clicking sound like insects chirping on a summer night. "Greetings, primitive ones," the creature said. Its mouth didn't move, but the words came through clearly in English. Some kind of translation technology, Morrison guessed. "I am Ambassador Velthar of the Galactic Council. We have detected your vessel and identified your species as newly capable of faster-than-light travel." Morrison stood up. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Starship Defiant. On behalf of humanity, I'm pleased to make first contact with your civilization." "Your pleasure is irrelevant," Velthar replied. The translator must have been good because Morrison could hear the dismissive tone clearly. "You will listen carefully. Your species has entered galactic space. This means you now fall under the jurisdiction of the Galactic Council. We have governed this galaxy for over 100,000 of your years. We maintain order among 847 member species." The image on the screen changed. Now Morrison saw what looked like an enormous space station, bigger than Earth's moon. Ships of various designs flew around it like bees around a hive. Text began scrolling across the screen in dozens of languages, too fast to read. "These are the laws that govern all civilized species," Velthar continued. "There are 12,483 regulations that your species must adopt. You have 30 of your Earth days to implement them fully. After that, inspectors will arrive to verify compliance." Morrison felt his jaw tighten. He glanced at his crew. Lieutenant Parker looked shocked. Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez had stopped working at her console and was staring at the screen with her mouth open. Navigation Officer Megan Torres shook her head slowly. "Ambassador, these laws," Morrison said carefully. "Did humanity have any say in creating them?" "Of course not," Velthar said, as if the question was stupid. "You are newcomers. You must learn civilized behavior from those of us who have maintained galactic peace for millennia. Your input is neither required nor desired." The screen changed again. This time, Morrison saw lists of restrictions. Humanity would have to limit their military to specific ship designs approved by the Council. They could only settle on planets that the Council designated. Human culture would need to be modified to remove elements the Council found disturbing. The list went on and on. "What if we refuse?" Morrison asked quietly. The bridge fell silent. His crew turned to look at him. On the screen, Ambassador Velthar made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Refuse?" the ambassador repeated. "No species refuses the Council. To do so would be suicide. You would face immediate quarantine. Your solar system would be blockaded. No trade, no travel, no communication with any galactic civilization. If you resisted the blockade, the Council's enforcement fleet would destroy your vessels and bombard your planet until you surrendered." Velthar leaned closer to whatever camera was transmitting his image. Morrison could see his reflection in those multiple alien eyes. "Let me be clear, Captain Morrison. Your species is primitive. You have barely learned to leave your own star system. The Council has ships that can crack planets. We have weapons that can ignite stars. We have member species who have forgotten more about warfare than your people have ever learned. You will comply with galactic law. There is no alternative. This is how it has always been. This is how it always will be." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people living their lives beneath blue skies. He thought about humanity's long history, the wars they had fought, the freedoms they had won. His ancestors had thrown off kings and tyrants. They had written constitutions and declarations of independence. They had died by the millions to prove that no one had the right to rule over others without consent. And now this insect-like creature was telling him that all of that meant nothing. That humanity had to bow down and obey rules they had no voice in making. Morrison smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "That's adorable," he said. "We have our own laws." Ambassador Velthar froze. For several seconds, the alien didn't move or speak. When he finally responded, his voice had changed. The dismissive tone was gone, replaced by something that sounded like genuine confusion. "What did you say?" "I said we have our own laws," Morrison repeated. "Humanity has spent thousands of years developing legal systems, rights, and freedoms. We're not going to throw all of that away because you told us to. If you want humanity to adopt your laws, then give us a seat at the table where those laws are made. Let us vote on them like equals. Otherwise, you can take your 12,000 regulations and shove them out an airlock." The alien's eyes seemed to flash. "You dare refuse the Galactic Council?" "I dare," Morrison said. "And I'm not alone. The government of Earth and the people I represent will back me up. We're happy to be friends with your council and all your member species. We're happy to trade, to share knowledge, to help each other, but we will not surrender our sovereignty. We will not become your subjects." "Then you have chosen extinction," Velthar said coldly. "The Council has crushed greater civilizations than yours. You are infants playing with forces you cannot comprehend. I will relay your foolish response to the Council. They will respond appropriately. Remember this moment, Captain Morrison. Remember it when your planet burns." The screen went dark. The stars returned to view. Morrison sat back down in his captain's chair. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "Lieutenant Parker, send a full recording of that conversation to Earth Command. Priority 1 transmission. Then plot a course back home. We need to warn them what's coming." "Yes, sir," Parker said, his fingers flying across his console. Course plotted. "We can be back to Earth in 48 hours. Chief Martinez," Morrison continued, "I want a full diagnostic of all weapons systems. Everything needs to be at peak performance." "Already on it, Captain," Martinez replied from engineering. "Though if that alien was telling the truth about their military capabilities, our weapons might not make much difference." "Maybe," Morrison said. "Maybe not. Humans have a long history of beating enemies who underestimated us. These council species have been in charge for 100,000 years. Know what happens to civilizations that rule that long? They get comfortable. They get arrogant. They forget how to really fight." Megan Torres turned from her navigation console. "You really think we can stand up to an entire galaxy?" Morrison looked at his crew, at the men and women who had volunteered to venture into the unknown with him. He saw fear in their eyes, but he also saw determination. Humanity had always been at its best when facing impossible odds. "I think we have to try," he said. "Because if we don't, if we just roll over and accept whatever the Council demands, then we're not really human anymore. We're just trained animals doing tricks for treats. Our ancestors didn't fight and die for freedom so that we could give it all away to the first aliens who told us to kneel." The Defiant turned and began its journey back to Earth. Behind them, somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the Galactic Council was receiving Captain Morrison's defiant message. No species had ever refused them before. No newly discovered civilization had ever dared to challenge their authority. But the Council didn't know humanity. They didn't understand the stubborn pride that had driven humans to survive ice ages and plagues, to split atoms and land on other worlds. They didn't realize that humans had a saying, "Give me liberty or give me death." The Council was about to learn what those words meant. On Earth, President Ryan Chase stood in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. Screens covered every wall, showing data from satellites, military bases, and space stations. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood beside him, her face pale as she finished reading the transcript of Morrison's encounter. "They're threatening us with extinction," she said quietly. "The Council has been running this galaxy for longer than human civilization has existed. Jake Morrison just made us enemies with the most powerful force in known space." Chase nodded slowly. Did he have a choice? Should we have just... 28 days had passed since Captain Morrison's encounter with Ambassador Velthar. Earth had transformed in that short time. Every shipyard worked around the clock. Scientists and engineers collaborated on projects that would have taken years under normal circumstances. The people of Earth knew war was coming, and they prepared. Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest orbital station, watching construction crews swarm over 6 new warships. He had been promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's entire deep space fleet. It was an honor he would have preferred to receive under different circumstances. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Morrison turned to see Admiral Kate Sullivan approaching. She looked tired. Everyone looked tired these days. Nobody was sleeping much. "We're building as fast as we can," Morrison said. "But it won't be enough. Even with these new ships, we'll only have 13 vessels. The Council has thousands." "I've been thinking about that," Sullivan replied. She pulled up a holographic display from her data pad. Morrison saw star charts and tactical formations. "Maybe we don't need to match their numbers. We just need to make them hurt enough that they'll negotiate." "You think they'll negotiate after we shoot at them?" "I think they'll have to if we prove we're not an easy target," Sullivan said. She zoomed in on the solar system. "The Council sees us as primitives. They expect us to panic and surrender. What if we don't? What if we bloody their nose so badly that continuing the fight costs more than just leaving us alone?" Morrison studied the tactical displays. Sullivan had positioned defense platforms throughout the solar system, creating overlapping fields of fire. Mines floated in probable approach vectors. Every station, every settlement, every ship had been armed. "It could work," he said slowly, "but only if we hit them hard in the first engagement. Make them respect us." "That's where you come in," Sullivan said. She highlighted a position near the Kuiper Belt, the outer edge of the solar system. "Intelligence suggests they'll enter here. It's the safest approach vector. When they arrive, your fleet will be waiting." 13 ships against however many they send," Morrison said. "What are we expecting?" 50, 100. According to the deadline, the Council is sending an enforcement fleet. Standard procedure for rebellious species. According to the data we've pulled from scientific publications. Usually around 50 ships. Enough to intimidate. Not enough to be considered a full invasion force. Morrison nodded. "They want us scared, not dead." "At least not yet." "Exactly. So we turn that against them. They're expecting overwhelming force to make us surrender. Instead, they'll get a real fight." The next day, Morrison gathered his crew aboard the Defiant. Chief Engineer Lisa Martinez had outdone herself. The ship bristled with new weapons, upgraded shields, and improved engines. Every vessel in the fleet had been similarly enhanced. Lieutenant Ben Parker handed Morrison a datapad with the latest intelligence report. "We've detected movement at the edge of our sensor range. Multiple ships moving in formation. Looks like they're keeping their distance, probably scanning us." "How many?" "Hard to tell at this range, sir. At least 40. Could be more." Morrison activated the fleet-wide communication channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. You know what's at stake here. In a few hours, the Galactic Council's enforcement fleet will arrive. They think we're primitives who will run at the first sign of trouble. Let's prove them wrong. Stay in formation. Follow your targeting assignments and remember your training. Earth is counting on us. Morrison out." He closed the channel and turned to Megan Torres at navigation. "Move us to the designated intercept point. Battle Formation Delta." The 13 human ships moved into position, forming a defensive sphere. Inside the formation floated 6 automated weapons platforms, each packed with enough missiles to take out a dozen enemy ships. It was a trick Morrison had learned from studying Earth's military history. When you're outnumbered, you make every shot count. The enemy fleet appeared on sensors 30 minutes later. As predicted, there were 52 ships, each one twice the size of the Defiant. They moved in a perfect geometric formation, their approach calm and measured. They weren't expecting resistance. Morrison received an incoming transmission. He nodded to Parker, who put it on the main screen. The alien who appeared was different from Ambassador Velthar. This one looked almost reptilian, with dark scales and yellow eyes. "I am Enforcer Prime Zekthal of the Galactic Council. Your deadline has expired. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your government will be placed under Council supervision. Resistance will be met with destruction." Morrison stood up slowly. "Enforcer, I'm Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth's Defense Fleet. You are entering human-claimed territory without permission. Turn your ships around and leave our system. If you continue your approach, we will consider it an act of war." Zekthal's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth. "Your weapons cannot harm our shields. Your primitive vessels cannot outrun our ships. You cannot win this confrontation. Surrender now and your planet will be spared." "Last warning," Morrison said quietly. "Turn back." I do not take orders from prey animals, Zekthal replied. Advance the fleet. Disable their ships. The communication cut out. The Galactic fleet began moving forward, accelerating toward the human defensive position. Morrison felt strangely calm. This was it. Humanity's first real battle in space. Chief Martinez, are the special packages ready? Ready and waiting, sir, Martinez replied from engineering. Just give the word. All ships execute attack pattern Omega, Morrison ordered. Fire on my mark. The human ships suddenly broke formation, scattering in different directions. The Galactic fleet, expecting the humans to either flee or surrender, hesitated for just a moment. That moment was all Morrison needed. Mark, he said. The weapons platforms that had been floating inside the human formation activated. Each one released a swarm of kinetic missiles. These weren't energy weapons or plasma cannons. They were simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds. As Chief Martinez had explained to the design committee, sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The missiles streaked toward the Galactic fleet at a significant fraction of light speed. The aliens activated their shields, confident that the primitive human weapons would bounce off harmlessly. Their shields were designed to deflect energy weapons and absorb radiation. They had protected galactic vessels for thousands of years. They had never been tested against pure kinetic force traveling at relativistic speeds. The first missile struck a galactic ship amidships. The shield flickered but didn't stop the projectile. The missile punched through the hull like it was made of paper. The ship exploded from the inside out, torn apart by the massive energy release. 2 more missiles found their marks seconds later. 2 more galactic ships disappeared in brilliant flashes. The Galactic fleet broke formation, ships scattering as they tried to evade the missile swarm. Their elegant geometric patterns dissolved into chaos. Morrison's fleet pressed the advantage, each human ship targeting the enemy vessels with precision fire. They're trying to regroup, Lieutenant Parker reported. Enemy commander is attempting to establish a new formation. Don't give them the chance, Morrison ordered. All ships focus fire on their command vessel. Take out their leadership. The human fleet converged on Zekthal's ship, a massive vessel at the center of the alien formation. Missiles and railgun rounds hammered its shields. The aliens returned fire, but their weapons seemed designed for ship-to-ship combat at longer ranges. At close quarters, the nimble human vessels dodged most of the incoming fire. Zekthal's ship took a direct hit to its engine section. The vessel lurched, losing power. 2 more galactic ships moved to protect their commander, but human missiles found them as well. The formation was collapsing. Enemy fleet is retreating, Parker announced. They're breaking off and heading out of the system. Morrison watched the tactical display as the remaining galactic ships fled. 37 vessels had limped away from the fight. 15 had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost 2 ships and taken moderate damage to 3 others. It was a victory, but Morrison knew it was just the beginning. Do we pursue? Megan Torres asked. No, Morrison said. Let them go. Let them report back to their council what happened here. Let them tell the story of how 13 human ships sent their enforcement fleet running with its tail between its legs. The bridge erupted in cheers. The crew hugged each other, laughing and crying at the same time. They had done it. They had beaten the Galactic enforcers, but Morrison didn't celebrate. He was already thinking about what came next. The Council wouldn't take this defeat lightly. They would send more ships better prepared, ready for a real fight. This victory had bought Earth time, but it had also guaranteed that the war was far from over. Back on Earth, President Chase watched the battle footage with a mixture of relief and dread. They had won the first round, but he knew the Council's response would be devastating. How long do we have? He asked Admiral Sullivan. Hard to say, she replied. Could be weeks, could be months. They'll need time to organize a proper response. But they will come, and next time they'll bring overwhelming force. The Galactic Council Chamber was a massive structure that floated in space, orbiting a neutron star at the center of the galaxy. Inside its crystalline walls, representatives from 847 species gathered to discuss the human problem. The chamber hummed with angry voices in hundreds of languages, all demanding action. Ambassador Velthar stood before the High Council, the 12 eldest species who held ultimate authority. His report on the human encounter had sparked outrage across the galaxy. Now he watched as Enforcer Prime Zekthal delivered his own testimony about the battle at Earth's solar system. 15 ships destroyed, Zekthal said, his voice heavy with shame. The humans used kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic speeds. Our shields were useless. They fought with tactics we have not seen in millennia. The chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding everything from immediate military action to complete isolation of the human species. High Counselor Drakthon, a being so ancient that its original species name had been forgotten, raised one of its many appendages. The chamber fell silent instantly. "This cannot stand," Drakthon said, its voice carrying through the chamber without technological assistance. "In 100,000 years, no species has defied the Council's authority. These humans must be taught their place. If we allow this rebellion to go unpunished, others will follow their example. Order will collapse." "Perhaps order should collapse," said a quiet voice. Every eye in the chamber turned to Ambassador Kixara. She was a member of the Valar species, beings known for their philosophical nature and long memories. The Valar had been part of the Council for 60,000 years, longer than most current members. "Explain yourself," Drakthon demanded. Kixara stepped forward, her silvery form seeming to glow in the chamber's light. "I mean no disrespect, but we should consider what the humans have shown us. They refused to accept laws they had no voice in creating. Is that not reasonable? Would any of us accept such terms from an outside force? The humans are primitives," Velthar snapped. "They achieved faster-than-light travel mere months ago. They know nothing of galactic civilization. And yet they defeated Enforcer Zekathal's fleet," Kixara replied calmly. "Perhaps they know things we have forgotten. The Council has maintained peace for 100,000 years, yes. But at what cost? We have stagnated. Innovation is discouraged. New ideas are suppressed. When was the last time any species developed truly revolutionary technology? Revolutionary technology leads to chaos," another counselor said. "We learned that lesson. In the Great Wars, the Council was formed to prevent such devastation from ever happening again. The Council was formed to ensure the founding species would never face a serious challenge to their power," Kixara said, her voice sharper now. Several representatives gasped at her boldness. "Let us be honest about what we have created. This is not a council of equals. It is an empire ruled by the oldest species, maintained through intimidation and suppression." "These accusations are outrageous," Drakthon said, but Kixara noticed the counselor's voice lacked its usual certainty. "Are they? The humans developed quantum weapons because they explored a branch of physics we banned centuries ago. Their kinetic missiles work because they refuse to accept our doctrine that energy weapons are superior. They won because they were not limited by our rules." The chamber erupted again, half the representatives shouting in anger, the other half nodding in thoughtful agreement. Kixara had touched on something many had thought but never dared to say. Drakthon raised its appendage again, demanding silence. "Enough, the Council will vote. All in favor of assembling a full war fleet to pacify the human species. Signify now." Lights illuminated throughout the chamber as representatives voted. When the count finished, the decision was clear. 512 species had voted for war. Only 43, including the Valar, had voted against. "It is decided," Drakthon announced. "Commander Thralvik will lead a fleet of 500 warships to Earth. The humans will surrender or be destroyed. This vote is final." Kixara bowed and left the chamber. As she walked through the crystalline corridors, she activated a secure communication device. The humans needed to be warned about what was coming. If they were going to survive, they needed every advantage they could get. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Morrison stood in the war room with President Chase and the military leadership. They had been receiving disturbing intelligence for weeks. The Council was assembling a massive fleet, far larger than anything Earth could hope to defeat in a straight fight. 500 ships confirmed, Admiral Sullivan said, pointing to the holographic display, led by Commander Thralvik, a veteran who fought in the last major galactic war 5,000 years ago. "He's never lost a battle." "Then it's time he learned what losing feels like," Morrison said. "Admiral, be realistic," Chase said quietly. "We have 23 operational warships now. They have 500. The math doesn't work in our favor." "It does if we change how the math works," Lisa Martinez said. She was no longer just a chief engineer. She had been promoted to head of weapons development. "I've been working on something based on our quantum research. The Council banned this area of study centuries ago, probably because they couldn't figure it out. But we did. She pulled up technical schematics on the display. Quantum entanglement allows for instantaneous communication across any distance. We've known that for years. But what if we could apply the same principle to weapons coordination? Explain it in terms we can all understand, Sullivan said. Imagine a network of weapons platforms scattered throughout the solar system, Martinez continued. Now imagine they're all quantum entangled, sharing targeting data and coordination instantaneously. No communication lag, no predictable patterns. The platforms would function as a single distributed weapon system. Morrison studied the schematics. How many platforms are we talking about? I can have 500 operational in 2 weeks, Martinez said. Each one armed with kinetic missiles, railguns, and some new toys I've been developing. Individually, they're not that powerful, but coordinated through quantum entanglement, they become something the galaxy has never seen before. The Sol defense grid, Chase said slowly, reading from the technical documentation. You really think this can work? I think it's our best chance, Martinez replied. Commander Threlvik will bring overwhelming force, expecting a traditional battle. Instead, he'll face an integrated defense network that can respond to his moves faster than he can make them. How long until the Council fleet arrives? Morrison asked. 3 weeks, maybe less, Sullivan said. We've been monitoring their movements. They're not trying to hide. They want us to see them coming. They want us to be afraid. Then let's give them something to be afraid of, Morrison said. Chief Martinez, you have authorization to deploy your defense grid. Use every resource you need. Admiral Sullivan, I want our fleet ready for mobile operations. We'll support the grid and hit them where they're weakest. And if it's not enough? Chase asked. Morrison met the president's eyes. Then we make sure they remember us. Every ship they lose, every battle that costs them blood, makes other species think twice about the Council's invincibility. Even if Earth falls, we light a spark that others can follow. 2 weeks later, the Sol defense grid was operational. 500 quantum-entangled weapons platforms orbited throughout the solar system, from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. Each platform was linked to a central control system, but they could also operate independently if needed. Martinez had outdone herself. The Council fleet arrived exactly when intelligence predicted. 500 massive warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They formed a crushing sphere formation, designed to press inward and destroy everything in their path. Commander Threlvik broadcast a message on all human frequencies. This is your final opportunity to surrender. Power down all defensive systems and prepare for occupation. Refuse and your planet will be reduced to ash, Morrison replied from the bridge of the Defiant. Commander, I'm Admiral Jake Morrison. You've been given bad information. Earth will not surrender. We will defend our home with everything we have. Leave now, and no more of your people need to die. Threlvik laughed. Primitive fool. You have 23 ships. I have 500. You have no defense satellites, no orbital fortresses. What do you have that could possibly threaten me? Oh, we have satellites, Morrison said with a smile. Lieutenant Parker, show him what we've built. Throughout the solar system, the defense grid came online. 500 weapons platforms lit up on the Council fleet's sensors, appearing simultaneously across billions of kilometers of space. Threlvik's laughter died. What is this? This is humanity saying no, Morrison replied. Attack if you want, but you're going to pay for every meter you advance. Threlvik studied his tactical displays. The human platforms were positioned perfectly, creating overlapping fields of fire. Any approach vector would put his ships under attack from multiple angles. But he had 500 warships and the resources of an entire galaxy. These humans were bluffing. They had to be. All ships advance, he ordered. Battle formation Epsilon. Overwhelming force. The galaxy teetered on the edge of civil war. 6 months after Admiral Morrison's broadcast, 137 species had openly joined the coalition of free worlds. Hundreds more supported the movement secretly, afraid of Council retaliation. The Galactic Council, once unquestioned, now fought to maintain control over a fragmenting empire. President Chase stood before the Coalition Assembly, a virtual gathering that connected representatives from across the galaxy. It was a historic moment. Never before had so many species coordinated outside Council authority. The Council is preparing for war, Chase said bluntly. Our intelligence suggests they're assembling the largest fleet in galactic history. They plan to crush our movement and make examples of our worlds. We need to be ready. Ambassador Kixara's holographic form shimmered as she spoke. The Veiler have committed our fleet to the Coalition. We stand with Earth and all free species, but we must be realistic. The founding species control the majority of the Council's military resources. Even with our combined strength, we may not be enough. Then we need to change the equation, said Admiral Morrison, who had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition forces. We can't win a conventional war against the Council. But we don't need to. We just need to make the cost of fighting too high for them to accept. How? Asked Representative Kolvak of the Drenth species. They outnumber us 3-1. Morrison pulled up a tactical display. We've been sharing Earth's quantum weapons technology with Coalition members. 63 species now have functioning defense grids. The Council's fleet advantage doesn't mean as much when they have to fight through integrated defense networks. That's defensive thinking, said General Tyrell of the Corvin military. We need to go on the offensive. Strike at Council installations. Force them to defend their territory instead of attacking ours. The debate raged for hours. Some Coalition members wanted aggressive action. Others advocated for pure defense. A few still hoped for peaceful negotiation, though that seemed increasingly unlikely. While the Coalition argued, Nicole Hayes was making a discovery that would change everything. Deep in Earth's intelligence archives, she found patterns in Council communications that didn't make sense. The founding species were redirecting resources to fortify specific sectors of space, far from Coalition territory. They were acting like something else threatened them. Hayes dug deeper, accessing archives from dozens of Coalition species. She found references to something called the Dark Return in ancient Council records. Most of the data had been classified or destroyed, but she pieced together enough to understand the truth. The Galactic Council hadn't been formed just to maintain order among existing species. It had been created to defend against an external threat. Something from beyond their galaxy had attacked 100,000 years ago. The Council had defeated this threat, but not completely. They had been watching for its return ever since, and now, according to the data Hayes had uncovered, long-range probes were detecting signs that the threat was coming back. Hayes rushed her findings to President Chase. Within hours, Morrison was reviewing the intelligence with growing concern. An extragalactic threat, Morrison said. Why didn't the Council mention this? Because it would undermine their authority, Chase replied. They've spent 100,000 years claiming they need absolute power to maintain peace. If species knew the real reason for the Council's formation, they might demand a different approach to the threat. We need to tell the Coalition, Morrison said. Wait, Hayes interjected. There's more. I analyzed the Council's military preparations. Their defenses are designed for the old threat, the one from 100,000 years ago, but their technology has barely advanced since then. They've stagnated just like we suspected. If this threat has evolved or adapted, the Council might not be able to stop it this time. Morrison understood immediately. That's why they're so afraid of technological innovation. New technology means unpredictable changes. The Council wants everything to stay the same because they beat the threat once using their current technology. They think changing anything might make them vulnerable. But stagnation has made them vulnerable anyway, Chase said. They're preparing to fight the last war with the last war's weapons. Morrison made a decision. We need to talk to the Council, not as enemies but as allies facing a common threat. The Coalition has been innovating, developing new technologies. That might be exactly what the galaxy needs to survive. 2 days later, Morrison broadcasted another message, but this time he sent it directly to High Counselor Drakthon. The message was simple. We know about the Dark Return. We need to talk. The galaxy can't afford a civil war when something worse is coming. The Council's response was silence for 12 hours. Then Drakthon agreed to a meeting, neutral territory, with strict security protocols. Morrison arrived at the designated coordinates with a small delegation, including President Chase, Ambassador Kixara, and Dr. Alex Chen, Earth's lead xenologist and physicist. The Council sent Drakthon and 3 other High Counselors. 3 months after their second victory, Earth still celebrated. Parades filled the streets of major cities. Admiral Morrison and his crew were hailed as heroes. Songs were written about humanity's defiance of the Galactic Council. But behind closed doors, Earth's leadership knew the truth. They were winning battles but losing the war. President Chase sat in his office late at night, reviewing casualty reports and resource assessments. 15 warships lost total. Thousands of people dead. The defense grid had been powerful, but the Council had learned from that battle too. Next time they would come prepared for quantum weapons. Next time they might bring 1,000 ships. Or 10,000. Admiral Morrison entered the office without knocking. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. They all did. "We can't keep doing this," Morrison said, sitting down across from Chase. "Every battle costs us ships and people we can't replace. The Council can lose 1,000 vessels and barely notice. We lose 10 and it cripples us." "I know," Chase said quietly. "Admiral Sullivan has been saying the same thing." "What do you suggest?" "We stop fighting and start talking." Chase looked up in surprise. "The Council won't negotiate. They've made that clear. Submit or die. Those are our only options according to them." "Then we change the conversation," Morrison said. He pulled out a data pad and set it on the desk. "I've been working with Intelligence Officer Nicole Hayes on something. We've been analyzing galactic communications, studying the political structure of the Council, and we've found cracks on this." "What kind of cracks?" "The kind that suggest we're not the only ones unhappy with how things work," Morrison explained. "After our last battle, we intercepted hundreds of transmissions from member species. Some were calling for our destruction, yes, but others were asking questions. Why did it take so much force to subdue one primitive species? Why is the Council so threatened by humans refusing to obey?" Chase leaned forward. "You're saying we have potential allies?" "Maybe. Ambassador Kiksara of the Valar species voted against attacking us. So did 42 other species representatives. That's not many out of 847, but it's a start. These species might be willing to support reform." "Reform of the Galactic Council?" Chase said slowly. "That's ambitious. It's necessary," Morrison replied. "Earth can't win a military victory. We've proven that we can fight, that we can hurt them, but we can't beat an entire galaxy. So we need to split that galaxy, turn this from Earth versus the Council into a movement for galactic reform." "And how do we do that?" Morrison smiled. "We go talk to them directly in person. We bypass the Council's official channels and speak to the galactic public." 2 weeks later, the Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel in the home system of the Galactic Council. Alarms immediately went off across the Council's defense network. A human ship had just appeared uninvited at the heart of galactic civilization. Morrison sat in his captain's chair, surrounded by his bridge crew. This was either brilliant or suicidal. Possibly both. "Incoming transmission," Lieutenant Ben Parker said. "Multiple ships powering weapons. They're demanding we leave immediately or be destroyed." "Open a channel," Morrison ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, civilian and military. I want everyone in this system to hear what I'm about to say." "Channel open, sir. You're broadcasting to approximately 4 billion beings across 200 orbital stations and 17 planets." Morrison stood up and faced the camera. "People of the galaxy, my name is Admiral Jake Morrison of Earth. I come here today not to threaten you, but to speak to you directly. The Galactic Council has told you that humanity is a violent, rebellious species that must be destroyed. They say we refuse to follow civilized law. Let me tell you the truth. On Council stations throughout the system, beings of hundreds of species stopped what they were doing to watch the unexpected broadcast. The Council tried to jam the signal, but Morrison's crew had anticipated that. The transmission continued. Earth refused to obey the Council's laws because we had no voice in creating them. Morrison continued. We were told to surrender our sovereignty, to give up rights and freedoms that our species fought thousands of years to achieve. We were told that we had no choice, that this is how things have always been. But why? Why should any species surrender their independence just because someone else tells them to? "Admiral, multiple warships are approaching," Megan Torres reported. "They'll be in weapons range in 3 minutes. Morrison ignored her and continued. "The Galactic Council claims to bring peace and order. But is it really peace when it's enforced through threats and violence? Is it really order when 847 species have no real voice in the laws that govern them? The founding members of the Council make the rules. Everyone else just obeys. That's not civilization. That's tyranny." On one of the Council's orbital stations, Ambassador Kiksara watched the broadcast with growing hope. The human was saying everything she had thought but never dared to express so publicly. Around her, other ambassadors watched with varying expressions of shock, anger, and secret agreement. "We don't want to be enemies of the galaxy," Morrison said. "We want to be partners, friends, allies. But we will not surrender our freedom to do so. Earth proposes a new system, A true council of equals, where every species has genuine representation, where laws are created through consensus, not dictated by the powerful, where member species maintain sovereignty over their own territories and cultures. 2 minutes to weapons range, Torres said urgently. Let the council keep its role in coordinating mutual defense and establishing trade standards, Morrison continued. These are reasonable areas for galactic cooperation, but internal laws, cultural practices, technological development, these should be decided by individual species, not mandated from above. This is not a radical idea. This is basic freedom. This is what intelligent beings deserve. High Counselor Drakthon watched the broadcast from the council chamber, its ancient features twisted in rage. Jam that signal. Destroy that ship immediately. But the signal continued. Morrison's words were being recorded and shared across the galactic network faster than the council could suppress them. I know some of you agree with these ideas, Morrison said. I know some of you have quietly resented the council's authority for generations. Now is the time to speak up. Now is the time to demand change. Earth stands with you. We will fight for freedom, not just for humanity, but for every species that wants to govern itself. 1 minute, Torres said. Admiral, we need to leave now. The council will tell you that this is chaos, Morrison said, wrapping up his speech. They'll say that without their absolute authority, the galaxy will descend into war. But consider this. Humanity has had hundreds of nations throughout our history, each with their own laws and cultures. We fought wars, yes, but we also learned to cooperate, to trade, to form alliances. We proved that diversity and freedom don't mean chaos. They mean progress. Weapons lock, Parker announced. Multiple ships preparing to fire. I leave you with this question, Morrison said. What kind of galaxy do you want to live in? One where you're told what to do, what to think, how to live? Or one where you have a voice, where you have choices, where you have freedom? The Council fears Earth not because we're violent, but because we represent an idea they can't control. The idea that all beings have the right to determine their own future. Think about it. Morrison nodded to Parker, who cut the transmission. Get us out of here. Maximum speed. The Defiant jumped to faster-than-light travel just as the Council's weapons fired. The beams hit empty space where the ship had been moments before. On the Council station, chaos erupted. Ambassadors argued loudly with each other. Some demanded Morrison be hunted down and executed. Others insisted his words deserved consideration. The careful order that had governed the galaxy for 100,000 years was cracking. Kixara stood and walked out of the chamber. She had a lot of work to do. Back on Earth, Nicole Hayes sat in an intelligence facility monitoring galactic communications. The response to Morrison's speech was overwhelming. Trillions of messages flooded the galactic network. The Council tried to censor them, but there were too many to block. Hayes compiled a report for President Chase. Within 48 hours of Morrison's broadcast, 16 member species had publicly called for Council reform. 32 others had expressed support privately. Protests had broken out on 12 worlds. The Vaylor species had formally proposed a vote to restructure the Council. But Hayes also noted concerning intelligence. The founding species were furious. They were consolidating power, calling in old favors and preparing to crush the reform movement by any means necessary. Hayes included one more critical piece of information in her report. While researching galactic history, she had discovered something the Council had been hiding. For millennia, the Council had systematically suppressed technological development that might threaten the power of the founding species. The quantum weapons that Earth had developed? The Council had discovered the theory centuries ago, but banned further research. The Council wasn't just authoritarian. They were deliberately keeping the galaxy in a state of technological stagnation to maintain their control. When Morrison read Hayes's report, he understood why the Council had. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station. The two groups eyed each other warily as they sat down. Morrison spoke first. Let's skip the politics and talk about reality, he said. Something is coming from outside the galaxy. Your probes detected it months ago. You've been fortifying defenses instead of fighting us because you know the real threat isn't the coalition. It's whatever destroyed your ancestors' civilizations 100,000 years ago. Drakthon's ancient form shifted uncomfortably. How did you learn of this? Does it matter? Chase replied. What matters is that we're all in danger. Your species and ours. Every civilization in this galaxy. The Council has defended against this threat before, Drakthon said. We will do so again. With technology that hasn't changed in 100,000 years? Dr. Chen asked. We've analyzed your defensive preparations. They're identical to records from the first contact with the extragalactic force. You're planning to fight them exactly the same way. What if they've adapted? What if they've advanced while you've stayed the same? The council representatives exchanged glances. One of them, a being called Velthus, spoke. Our methods worked once. They will work again. Maybe, Morrison said. Or maybe you need something new, something unpredictable. The coalition species have been innovating because you weren't suppressing us. We've developed quantum weapons, new propulsion systems, advanced AI coordination, technologies you banned because they threatened your control. But now those same technologies might save all of us. You want us to abandon control, Drakthon said, to allow chaos. I want you to allow progress, Morrison corrected. There's a difference. Look at what Earth accomplished in just months of freedom. We developed weapons that changed the balance of galactic power. Imagine what 1,000 species could create if given the same freedom. Imagine what we could build together if we stopped fighting each other and focused on the real threat. Kixara added her voice. The Council was formed to protect the galaxy. That was noble. But somewhere along the way, protection became control. Control became stagnation. You've been so focused on preventing chaos that you've prevented growth. Now we're all vulnerable because of it. The meeting lasted for 6 hours. The council representatives were resistant at first, defending their system, their authority. But slowly, as Morrison and his team presented evidence of the approaching threat and the inadequacy of current defenses, cracks appeared in their certainty. Dr. Chen delivered the final argument. We've run simulations based on the data we've gathered. If the extragalactic force attacks with the same strength they used 100,000 years ago, and if they use the same tactics, your current defenses have a 60% chance of success. Those aren't bad odds. But if they've adapted even slightly, if they've advanced their technology at all, your chances drop to 15%, maybe less. And if we work together? Drakthon asked quietly. Then we can't calculate the odds, Chen admitted. Because we'll be using strategies and technologies that don't exist yet. We'll be innovating in real time, adapting to whatever they throw at us. It's unpredictable. But unpredictable is better than predictably doomed. Drakthon was silent for a long time. Finally, the ancient being spoke. What do you propose? Morrison laid out his plan. The Galactic Council would remain, but reformed with genuine representation for all species. Each civilization would maintain sovereignty over its own territory and culture, but they would coordinate defense and share technology freely. The Council's role would be facilitating cooperation, not enforcing obedience. And the threat? Drakthon asked. We face it together, Morrison said. Every species, every ship, every innovation we can muster. We build a defense that's never been seen before, not because you commanded it, but because we all chose it. 3 weeks later, the reformed Galactic Union held its first assembly. 847 species sent representatives, but now they came as equals. The founding species no longer held absolute power. Decisions required consensus. It was messy, inefficient, and frustrating. It was also exactly what the galaxy needed. The extragalactic threat arrived 2 months after the Union's formation. The enemy fleet was massive, dwarfing anything the galaxy had seen before. But they faced something they hadn't